Welcome everyone to the New American Cinema, the Filmmakers Co-op ninth, can you believe, ninth annual New Year, New Work, a collection, a celebration of personal vision cinema. And Emily and I are sitting in our office at 475 Park Avenue South. We have a screening room, a film archive, a paper archive. And this year and last year, because of COVID, we are doing our celebration and our festival on Vimeo on demand. And it's a pleasure to see everyone's beautiful faces. It's amazing to make personal vision cinema, to make films about the creative spirit and an affirmation of life, and especially in these troubled times. So we had 4 curators. My name's M.M. Sarah, Mary Magdalene Sarah, can you believe it? And that's probably why I make films. It started me out as an iconoclastic person outside the heteronormative patriarchal system. And the co-op's perfect place to be. This is Emily Singer. She's president of our board of directors. We just had a board election. And isn't it wonderful to have new board members? And Emily here will.
Yeah, I'll introduce the other curators. So it's so nice to meet all of you who I haven't met before.
Take over control.
Take over control. It's very exciting. You know, the Filmmakers Co-op is 60 years old. So it's incredibly special that we were able to do New Year, New Work. Sadly, not everybody's with us, but it's so great to see all of you. We also have Julia Curl and Greg Bierman, who are the other 2 curators who are also on the board, who have been involved with the Filmmakers Co-op for a long time. They're filmmakers themselves. So if you guys just want to wave your hands or say anything, feel free.
And you can check out our beautiful website, www.film-makerscoop.com. Anyway.
Yeah, so maybe we can share the slideshow, and you know, really the hope is that we can talk about your films and you can share what you want about these films, why you made them, techniques that you wanted to try out, and if you have questions for the other filmmakers, that would be great. You know, this is really supposed to be a dialogue about personal vision. But we'll move on to Jean, who is here.
All the freaks.
And show her slide.
And this is a slide from Swish. So, Jean, if you want to tell us a bit about Swish, and you know, if anybody has any questions for Jean,
and working on film. Can you make
this is actually a 40-year-old film, so it's not really new work, but it seems to have sustained itself over time. It seems to be the one that is most always included in festivals, and maybe it's because it's about the film medium, and I made it right at this moment when film was transitioning to video. And so many people who were interested in moving image work were going into the electronic domain. And so my goal with the piece was to really call attention to the distinctive features of film. So it's made, each image is single frame. It's made with the moving subject and a moving camera. And it's about my relationship to the camera and the image. It's about my kind of relationship to film, and the relationship an artist has with their tools is an intimate relationship. So it's that intimacy that is I've expressed through my, using my own person and having it be a very kind of up close and personal film. But it is about film. I mean, I printed on different types of film stock, so it really is calling attention to the medium itself, but it's also calling attention to other sorts of things. motion itself, and yeah, and
The female body, right?
the female body, exactly. So it's very much about that. Yeah, it's sort of, it's kind of, it's like making love to your camera, I guess, in some ways. Yeah, it's about that kind of relationship. And it's very interesting because the first time I showed it was at San Francisco Cinematheque, and I almost didn't show it because I was sitting in the audience feeling very embarrassed that it was me on the screen. But yeah, and it's odd that it's become the most viewed film, but I've gotten over that. I mean, that was a long time ago. When films are new, it's always that sense of the first projection.
I have a question for Jean. So are you working digitally primarily now? That's the first part of my question. And the second is because this film is so embedded with the, a kind of identity of the material of film. How do you feel about the digital translation and all of those kinds of implications?
Well, I love to see my work projected. I had a show at Chicago Filmmakers just right before the pandemic, and they have fabulous projection there. And it was just such a pleasure to see the work on the screen, large scale, with the kind of lenses and all of that. So, I mean, there's no comparison between the digital transfer and looking at it on a screen. But that said, you do want your work to be seen. And so it does seem to be the only way these days, particularly the last couple of years, to get your work out there.
Mhm.
And I do have an enormous amount of footage in 16 millimeter. And just this past year, I got a grant from Light Press. And you might all want to know that they have an annual grant program where they give $1,000 credits to do digital transfers of your 16 millimeter work. So I had 1,000 feet transferred of film. Some films I've never shown that I've made, but I just never put out there. That and also my idea for the project, for the proposal, is to take the film medium and then to sort of blend that with the digital medium. So I'm going to do things digitally that would be very difficult to do with the film, in the film format. So that's kind of a project, that's on my desk right now to get going on. The thing about working with digital now is what's astonishing is how easy it is to do things, because I mean, I worked on an optical printer, which is sort of frame by frame. I mean, in some of my films, which is like frame by frame composition, which is a really long, slow, grueling process. So the fact that you can do these things so quickly and layer things so easily, the digital medium has its own interests. So I guess in some ways, I'm still working with the physical properties of the medium, but it's the digital medium and not the film medium at this point. I mean, I love film. It's just too difficult to continue. I know a lot of people are working with it, but I think it's the time frame of how long it takes to do things. But the idea of combining the two media is interesting to me too. I mean, this past year I was commissioned by the Chicago Film Archive to make a film using their collection. And that was interesting because I could work with all this film from decades, from the 40s, 50s, and all of that, and then layer it and combine it digitally. So it's interesting to do things with both media. I feel like that's the place we are right now. So I'm trying to work with that, where we are in the present with the current technology.
I'm given the opportunity to reflect on how do I perceive shape? At what point? Because you do have this overall temporal shape to it, right? Where things begin very, very abstract, and then they get more and more concrete until it's like almost a taboo image by that time, right? Because you've been searching to find edges out of those changes of lightness and darkness. and out of the edges to be able to find a surface, which is kind of the steps in perceiving, right? So it's like this kind of lesson in perception, which to me overrides the considerations of the medium, although that is part of it too. So, you know, I love the 16-millimeter film as much as anyone else, but it seems like for it to be persisting as a featured work, you know, in all of your films that you've made, that it's addressing something that's more present and contemporary than, you know, that's worth kind of thinking about. For me, that's what I was thinking about. It's really about the process of making something legible to the eye. Legible is too much about language, but it's like, you understand what I mean, in terms of perception, that is a process that you slow down. Whereas for us right now, it's instantaneous. You know, we see faces, and, you know, discern things in the background of the image, but you slow it all down so that you know, it's like we're newborn babies or something looking and trying to discern form.
Okay, we're gonna introduce Thomas's book. Hi, Thomas.
Hello.
Hi, Thomas.
Hi there.
Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your work?
I would love to.
Wonderful.
Yeah, my name is Thomas Jenkins, and I've made a few motion pictures. It's I've been doing it since I was probably about 10 years old. I wanted to make my first motion picture, a zombie film. Actually, it was when I was just a tyke. But this one was, I don't know if any of you got around to watching it or finishing it, but it kind of began as an accident. I was just needing some practice with my editing techniques. I had recorded a few spiders in a different bathtub actually, and then realized that the background of it, and I work in digital, of course, I came up in digital and haven't got my hands messy with the film, so I feel like a bit of an outsider here, but nonetheless, it's all images, right? So we're all, you know, we're all on the same page. But yeah, it was just I just kind of keyed out the white, and we're just looking at this frame here, like just that's the same spider, and just made it run around. That was the idea of the middle story there. The Hollywood was kind of just a collection of images. So the story, that if you decide there is one, it's up to you. Yeah, it's more of a sanity process for me than it is. I'm sure, as many of you understand, it's less about the poster on the street or the screening itself, and more about kind of just having something that keeps us from going off and going mad. Yeah. So, but as much as I you know, remaining sane and happy is important, I do really care about the world and what can be done with it. And I think writing a good motion picture is a lot of fun. It's broken down into two sections, really. There's the beginning and end, the bookends, and then there's the centerpiece, which there was very little direction in preparation going into this project. Like I said, it was kind of an accident. So there was maybe 3 days where I sat down with the crew, a small, or you know, 2 or 3 or 4 people, and I said, this is what we want to do. I have no idea where it's going to go. I have no idea what we're doing here. I have this bag of potting soil and my new apartment. I haven't lived here more than a month, and I'm going to make this movie. So I had him walk around, put the dirt on the ground, had my friend walk to the door, and just that was. And so the really nice bit of dialogue that we got was from my good friend Nicholas Button, who's just like one of the best improv actors I've ever met, and like great musician I've worked with a lot. He wrote the story of Cobra Cakes, and so that was actually his improvisational sharing of that story. So all I did was I just held my phone and recorded him while he did his piece, and my partner Stephanie was Susie, and she was his date. So they got to listen to the story of Cobra Cakes, and that was that. It was really like we needed more substance, and I didn't want to try too hard. So I just let things happen, and it was really just very simple. But I believe, yeah, so all the dialogue was recorded on iPhone. It was just improvised. So it just came down to my direction and telling him what he needed to do for, to do this part again if he's laughing now. Like it's improvised direction. So that's kind of where my skills come in.
Oh, okay.
And the parking.
Hi. Well, it's really been an honor to be included. And I guess if I have to say, it's just so exciting to see Roz Schneider and Marty Edelheit. This is the first time in many decades. And the whole idea of starting out as a woman artist filmmaker at a time when really there were hardly any women making movies. And we, of course, honored Maya Deren and Germaine Dulac, but in terms of being able to do things for ourselves, completely surrounded by men who were not very encouraging, it's really something to still be alive. I mean, I kind of felt back then in my 20s, early 30s, I felt that in order to be a woman artist or a poet of recognition, you had to kill yourself, like Sylvia Plath or Anne Sexton. So the fact that I'm now 71 years old and seeing you all on the screen is just kind of amazing, especially having gone through the pandemic era. I made this film kind of determined to fight to stay alive because people in LA, which is where I live now, weren't wearing enough masks. So in order for me to get some exercise, I found this completely deserted parking lot, and I would walk around this fairly ugly parking lot, and I got to know every single inch and crack and space and color of the parking lot, and started to take pictures with my iPhone, and my invisible iPhone fades into the virtual background here. And so this picture that you're seeing here is one of the first photo collages. It's called Diana of Ephesus, her sisters and clones march down the long, hard road. Because I felt very guilty that as an older person, I didn't feel safe marching with everybody else, protest marches, and yet I felt very passionate about wanting to march. So I started to make the movie as my own way of being part of, at least artistically, being part of that collective march. So I wanted to say that whole struggle of being a woman artist filmmaker back then, I wrote about in my novel, Sex of the Cyborg Goddess, about a woman who's determined to become a filmmaker despite the odds. So Roz and Marty especially, I think you'll identify with that book. I hope you'll read it. You can get it at bookshop.org, and I'll put the title Sex and the Cyborg Goddess in the chat so you can find it. So anyway, if you have questions about the film, which was basically a whole compendium of photo collages that also includes the avant-garde dancer Mao Chen-Hui, then I'm happy to take your questions. But this was the first time I was making a film completely digitally out of photo collages, and I was kind of excited to do that and glad to get it out there. I'm very happy to be part of something coming out of the New York Filmmakers Co-op, because they have several of my other films. The first of which, actually, we were talking about archives, and the National Film Preservation Foundation gave the Yale Film Archives a grant last year, this past year, to preserve my first film, End of the Art World, which the New York Filmmakers Co-op carries with Andy Warhol, Bob Rauschenberg, Jasper Johns, etc. So that's being preserved.
You can get, it's an amazing feature-length film. Priyanka, how's your connection?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me all?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank God. Okay.
about your creative process. It's an amazing poetic film, and it's feature length.
Yeah, it's I it's like I shot it in a like it was shot in a university setup, even though that doesn't show in the movie. But like I'm gonna talk a little bit about like what I was thinking at the time. It's like so before I moved to New York, I moved to New York like 5 years ago. Before I moved to New York, and I was living in this very bohemian small town called Athens, Ohio. I don't know how many people have know about this. So it's like, and they have a university over there, and there's like a lot of people from different countries, even though it's a small university, but there is like a huge amount of international students are there, like over I don't know how many countries. And so when I was visiting quite often over there, and I felt like on my mind, like I was thinking like so many different people, and they international people, like students, when they come there for first time, like this amalgamation of so many different culture, language, and just varieties and different, like it's like almost like a small globalized cosmopolitanized, like that kind of in like a town. And what is the commonality, like of how people are really connecting with each other? And I was like, that was like constantly on my mind, like where is the backdrop, where is the what is the foundation? Is this foundation is media based, or is this foundation is forming as they're communicating with each other? Like what is informing them, and how this information is formed based on personal experience versus not versus, and also how much we are already know from all this information that around us, like. So I was kind of exploring that, and then yeah, that's the like when I started making this film, I was just yeah, one thing I know that like that I figured out that I cannot really, this movie is not about directing, it's more about unfolding, it's more about letting it happen. And because there are so many people involved in this movie, especially in the second chapter, it was very interesting process, like almost like each one of us kind of, almost like everything kind of unfolded as in front of camera, at least like camera is like a witnessing something that camera is a part of it, it's almost like a subject itself, of course. And yeah, and then most of the movie actually came alive through editing, like through editing it's kind of became this is kind of started finding his own rhythm, started finding the music and tonality that kind of connect with all these different and it's not just shot it here, it's just it was shot over more than 20 places and more than 3 countries, and there is so many different people, culture, and colors and language and all this other thing involved. So yeah, that was pretty much my like what is the how my main concern, not concern, like almost like it was almost like a more of a research project, like how media, what is the backdrop of our communication when we don't have any like by default commonality, and how like is this, and through this research of it, maybe this commonality between two people becomes much more than media and communication. It's much more soul based, like you said, poetry, like something very innate, something very feeling based, that words cannot communicate, because they all come from different language, and perceive of different language is so different, because some, word sounds and mean different because of the how we pronounce it in different, all this, so many little nuances. So what is the core here? That's like everything has to go, and only bare thing is these feelings that we can feel for each other. Like it was like that kind of exploration. And that exploration actually took place through the process of making the movie. It was not formed before making the movie. So it was very, for me, it was a more of a research and journey for me, and rather than me putting something together, which is already been, achieved beforehand. Yeah, so that's what I felt when I was making this movie.
Janice is next.
Yes.
Hi, Janice, you're next. Where are you?
Okay, just had to unmute myself. Hi, everybody. So my film, 3 Seasons in 2021, was actually conceived as a New Year's greeting card to provide a kind of sensory nourishment, I'd say, to my friends during a time of extreme deprivation and instability, as we know. And I would say it was inspired to a certain degree, actually. I realized after I made it, I don't think I realized it when I was making it, but inspired to a certain degree by the film that Willard Moss made with John Hawkins for Willard Moss's wife, the marvelous Marie Menken, called A Valentine for Marie. That I think that film is still distributed by the Filmmakers Co-op.
Yes.
Is it? Yeah.
Oh, yes, we're going to digitize it.
Oh, it's such a beautiful little love poem, really, made back in 1965. But it's actually a greeting card, like mine was originally conceived to be a greeting card as well. And also, I see it as a study for a more extensive investigation that I've been working on for a couple of years, actually, in another medium. I also make artist books and do a lot of work with photography. And I've worked for a couple of years on a project called Improbable Hybrids, where I move around my environment here, where I live in Northern California. And I collect images of natural subjects, plant life primarily. And I made many pieces for this Improbable Hybrids project, where I would take elements of one plant or flower, piece of nature in one form or another, and using digital tools, merge them together to create some kind of unseen combination and in this sort of synthesis. So, apropos of the earlier discussion about digital versus analog formats, I find that the digital medium works best for that kind of project, conceptually and I consider the digitization a kind of, it's more like a synthetic process for me. Honestly, I think of a film process as somehow more authentic, but there's a certain synthetic nature that I feel is imbued by digital media. And what I'm doing is making a kind of synthesis between two disparate items from nature that normally would not live together. So that's the outgrowth of this project. The first of which you've seen in the Three Seasons film will be taking on a larger form in the future. And I would also be working again with the very talented composer Rob Stevenson, who I think is here somewhere in this Zoom room as well. He made a composition called 11 Gardens, and one component of that 11 Gardens composition is the soundtrack to this film of mine, Three Seasons in 2021. So I don't know if Rob would want to say anything about the making of the soundtrack. I don't want to put him on the spot.
No, I'd be happy to say something. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Live? Okay, great. I'll say something about 11 Gardens. It's basically a 34-minute improvisation that I made particularly for Janice, because I very much appreciate her interest in nature and how she thinks about it. And I live in New York City. I've been urban since I was 19 years old. And her work always just brings me this non-urban thing so strongly, that is so, and it's so beautiful. I'm a bike rider, and I like to go to ride in parks and through nature. So I do that a lot here, like Jamaica Bay, whatever, Preserve and Massapequa out on Long Island. And I try to stay in touch with nature as much as I can, being an urbanite. And I made this composition for her, and it's 11, rather, I don't know, 2.5 to 4 minute improvisations that were recorded one after the other with just a slight break to make sure there was a demarcation so she could use them separately as the 11 sections. And I worked a long time before I recorded this, looking at films she had made with nature in them and testing various kinds of improvisation with her work live. As I would watch the film, I would kind of, on the piano, I played the piano live. I would work with her film until I got things that I thought really suited and felt somehow connected to her work and the way that she edits and thinks about visual rhythms, which she has done for her entire filmmaking career. I believe she's been very involved with visual rhythm. And so it was, I just made it for her, hoping that she would like it, and she did. And I'm very happy about that. I'm so pleased with the way this one section has come out in relationship to her film about the kind of with images from around where she lives. And my improvisation draws from all kinds of musical sources. I originally came up playing in the church. I studied classical music until I was about 23 years. I was in some punk bands after that, needing to kind of get away from all of that. And I minored in non-Western music as an undergraduate, and I eventually studied electronic music at Mills College for 5 semesters. So my influences are pretty widespread, and I continually take in all of these influences into my improvisation. And if you really listen carefully, you could hear all kinds of things in my music that you might not think were there right away. But I am very much enjoying this kind of collaborative work with Janice, and hope that it continues for some time, because I think that it works very well. And I tried very hard to find to think about gardens and plants and the things all around those in nature, insects, bugs, hordes of bugs, birds singing, trees full of birds singing, whatever, the smell of dirt, and the strange natural way that things grow together and in constantly amazing, marvelous configurations that are, I think, always impressive and worthy of great attention. And it's something that we need to be concerned about, particularly in the kind of world we live in, which does not seem to really respect nature often the way that it should, and the planet we live on. And I don't want to go on too long and let Janice talk about the work more, but I thank you for selecting her film and for giving me a chance to show it to other people through this, the Filmmakers Cooperative. I think it's a great opportunity. So thank you very much. And this is very interesting. I'm learning so much listening to everyone speak.
Well, thank you, Rob. I listening to you talk about the attention you gave to the composition reminds me of how inspired I was by the music to look forward to making the longer piece where I could take advantage of all of the work that you put into the composition that you created. And I felt, I think a lot of the elements were very appropriate in the sense of creating, I don't mean in a literal sense, but a sense of dislocation that was kind of underlying my choice of images and sequences with this film, and your kind of resistance to a traditional harmony that I wanted to take advantage of as well. And then also the way that you used sort of micro and macro elements in the sound, for me, mirrored in not so much a literal way, but more of an abstract way, some of the subject matter also that comprised the images. So we had this micro macro kind of imagery, and in some ways the construction and your choices of sound also had that kind of auditory language, which again kind of propelled me in a way to be very excited about moving forward with this kind of collaboration.
Toby, building here.
Hi, thank you. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I really appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate being able to hear from everybody who's here who's in the festival. I just want to thank the Film Co-op for the opportunity to be in this festival. I have been doing video work for a bit over 20 years now. And since I was in college, and I also I mix in film work that I've done for a little while, for less time than I've been doing video, but I like to kind of collapse and combine the mediums in different ways, and I haven't really with my particular approach, I haven't really had much luck with festivals, so I really appreciate the opportunity to show here, and to be able to see my work, alongside all these other great filmmakers. It's a really wonderful thing for me. So this piece actually was pretty recent. I did it in the middle of last year while I was in a residency at MassMocha in Massachusetts. And a lot of my work is really based in family oriented themes, and kind of taking apart my family and really kind of investigating it and in individuals and the entire kind of family structure. So with this piece, I was really kind of looking at constructing a kind of a new kind of family tree that I could where I can kind of look at my family and examine it as a total structure in certain ways. So a lot of the images in the piece, like you see in this still, are images that that are old family photographs or photos that I took. You can even, the baby that you see in this image, that's me, and photos that I've taken on vacations or just in my own home. And then and I combine these with other things I'm really interested in specific individuals in my family who've either written, published writing, or have kind of published other work in the public domain. So I have an inventor in my family who I'm very interested in, and so a lot of these kind of diagrams you see are actually images from patents that I've used in my work that are related to this inventor in certain ways. So this piece is was really one where I was kind of sitting in my studio at MassMocha, and it's really one of the rare times where I had just a kind of a blank slate regular artist studio where I didn't I just brought with me what I could work with and didn't have a chance to really generate in the studio. So I was taking a look at this window that I had in the studio that has this amazing view of MassMocha, of different buildings, and it's just, if you're not familiar with it, it's an old factory, and so the view became a very important part of this piece as well, and kind of the background became the background of the video, and illuminated all these images that I was working with. And so that became a very important part of the piece too. So that's really all I really want to say about the piece. But it has a lot to do with a kind of current and future directions I'm going to be taking with my work as well. So I really appreciate the chance to show it. Yeah, thank you.
Toby, what are the inventions?
So the inventor that I really focus on is in my family is Richard Gatling, who invented the Gatling gun. And so actually none of these images in this piece that are the patent sketches are actually the original patents for the Gatling gun, but they're all derivative patents. And you can see at the upper left where it says Gatling, that's actually his grave that's in Indianapolis. But these other patent images are actually various things, or toys, toy guns, and various other devices that the middle ones on the bottom, I think, are different devices, and you see parts. But the important thing for me was the reference to the Gatling gun. Has all these patents have some kind of visual reference that you can see relates it visually to the gun itself.
Rosalind Schneider.
The silent.
Silent Snow.
Silent Snow.
It's beautiful. Hi, Roz.
Hello, hello. This is like one of the few pieces that I have not worked with the composer, but somehow the silence was really important, and I was very fortunate to find a blizzard that was really cooperating, because that did not happen this year, but last year it did, and there was enough stuff that was providing me with the material. I look at nature primarily as a tremendous source of both inspiration, collection, and it offers the ability to combine things and make them more expanded visions of reality. There were a couple of things that other people had said that so really relates to how I approach the work, and the whole concept of unfolding, that can not only present things in a way that has not been seen before, but also there is a foot in reality that then I like to stretch out. I don't want to lose reality, but neither do I want to keep it intact. Somehow it's just the focus, and the focus is really on expanded reality. I was the first artist to show film as art at the Hirshhorn. This goes back to the 70s. And they never considered film as an art form. And they didn't quite know what they were going to do with it. And so they painted the wall white, but with a high quality paint that had the ability to capture the luminescence of film. And it was real. People bought tickets. I mean, that had never happened before. It was really very, very strange to think in terms of my work being some kind of a commercial product that people would pay to see. And it was kind of it did two things. One thing, it was kind of very exhilarating because I was also interviewed, and there was a lot of attention being paid. And the other thing, I felt that it was a danger. The danger being, if you really are interested in long lines, are you going to compromise what you are putting out there in order to get those long lines? And that was really important. And so, yeah, I've been at this for a very long time. And I've kind of rejected the idea of any sense of compromise. And so it's if something becomes more important than others as far as which films, became more recognized or more, seen, that was fine, but it didn't negate the ones that didn't. And so the body of work, it encompasses a lifetime. And I don't see the difference between the creation of video or film. It's just that video now is much more hands-on. And yes, I can do things that I started to do in film, but now I'm able to expand it. The whole idea of taking a frame and be able to superimpose different speeds, different times, different lights, dividing things up, using images in repetition. I used to work on an optical printer. I would work through the night until it got to be morning. I'd know it was morning because I heard birds. And so that was another way of working. And I never could put the optical printer on automatic because there could be something I wanted to spend more time with and not go buy it quickly. So it was a very, very long process. And I was able to use my dream state in order to make decisions, because I was always working in reversal and you couldn't see anything until you got it back from the lab. And I kind of envisioned my film combinations in a dream state. And I was successful about 95% of the time. So when I was putting one image on top of another, I knew exactly what was going to be happening with it. And I never did A and B rolling because I was working with one image on top of the other. And so in order to make things work, I would use black magic marker in order to get rid of the splice marks. So very, very labor intensive. The vision has completely transferred now to film. I mean, to video from film. And it's also expanded the possibilities of what I could do. And so I'm very, very happy to continue doing work in video and taking advantage of everything that's possible. And I've given up using my video camera because the iPhone is better. It has more detail. And I had just purchased one of the 13 with the 3 lenses. It really is something. It's a matter of getting a very high quality image that relates very well to high definition. I needed to buy a new computer because the other one couldn't take the high definition. And so one goes on. The only problem I have is I always used to edit myself. I never worked with anyone for editing. Now I'm working with an editor who I connected with when he was still a student at Purchase. And he was in that media program that is a really important program. And he is a sensitive young man who understands exactly what I want and how to do it. I have tremendous amount of ideas, but then I want to have them realized, and I don't want to have to go through the entire process in order to make that happen. So if I could connect with someone who is very fast and very knowledgeable, this moves things along. And at this particular point in my life, I don't have the time to then learn yet another technology. And technology keeps on changing. I mean, as well as the application of what you think you did 2 years ago. Oh, you're not still working in that anymore, are you? I'm just like, oh my God. Yeah, we just have to keep on going on. But if you can accept the change in a positive way and make it work for you, this is a very glorious time to be creating. I've always felt that there is a time that people will look at the work and be able to see the nuance and not necessarily think in terms of it as a finished commercial product. And so that really is the part that I feel that there are so many possibilities right now. And there is also this looking back on earlier work that has not really been done. It's like suddenly there is this tremendous interest. Who are these people? Who was making work in the 60s and the 70s? Why don't we know about them? This goes right across the board for painters and sculptors, filmmakers. There are so many people that have done important work that it really is not part of the canon. And that's where I feel that the co-op has come in a very strong and very positive way.
Right, Rosalind. I agree with you. Preservation, so important, right, Rosalind? That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, preservation, appreciation, and the continuance of one's vision. And that is the most important part. just to, you know, be inspired to keep on making work. And, you know, and if you've got that going for you, you've got everything.
Well, next we have Martin.
Martin, there you are, Martin Klein.
Variations. Thank you so much, Rosalind.
Where's
Hi, how are
hi,
you?
Martin. Loved your film. Are you from Uruguay?
I'm from Uruguay, that's right. Thank you for selecting my film. Well, I would like to talk to you about my film just a few minutes. Variations is a film about some images that have been in my mind for several years. And there was some years ago, that I had to put them in a film, like most of you. So I got the crew. We worked. We looked for the location, for this location, for about a year and a half. So it was quite a long process to get this location. And then we got there, and a few months later we start shoot. I think it's a film about identity, and among all, I think it's a film about you know, it's a film about healing. I think healing some strong things. And well, that's the result. I hope you enjoy the film. I was trying to put the image and the sound at front, you know, and using a very little dialogues. In fact, there is no dialogue in the film, just
yeah, that's, I thought there's no language, but it came across through the visuals, the couple.
yes, that's it. Just a little poem, a brief poem from Idea Vilariño, a great Uruguayan poet. That in fact we discovered the poem when we were editing the film, not before, and that was great. I worked with a great cinematographer called Diego Pavese, very young, and he understood me immediately. That this is the first time we worked together. I think he made a great job.
Barbara, is this work you know, based on software that you wrote?
Yes. Yes. That's a very important part of it. It's computational, and it's all the changes are algorithmic algorithms that well, the coding I did. Yes. So I wrote the code scripts, and but it's I did edit it afterwards, but the running of the code and the generating of the you know, the raw material for the edit is done in pretty much one sitting, you know, so it's possible, it's built in that I also use key presses, right? So the code is supposed to do something like like this that we're seeing, you know, this kind of swarm of elements, and but then the character of those elements can change, and also the cropping of the image can change, but that is also happening in real time. So it's kind of a performance, so to speak, like the code is doing something in real time with the image. And if I want to change the portion of the photograph, because it's just one still photograph, I can do that in real time, and I can change the character of these picture elements that that I'd like to call mindless agents. You know, there's an agency to them. There's a behavior that's that is kind of constituting the image that we're seeing. The behavior of these swarms, and that I can change in real time while I'm recording it. So that's part of the process of doing it. But of course, I'm not expecting people to know
How do you-
that. Yeah.
A couple of questions. I don't mean to dominate, but I'm just trying to sort of get a handle on exactly what's happening. You know, where your own intervention into things that happen occurs, as opposed to, what was the wording that you used? That
Mindless agents.
The mindless agents take over. I mean, I guess in any kind of art, you know, there's some sense of being in control and not being in control, but in what you might call generative art, there's a kind of, what was it that Saul LeWitt said? Something along the lines of conceptual artists are not rationalists, they're mystics. So there's a certain kind of faith that whatever the mindless agents are doing, it's going to work out. But then you said that you're also intervening at certain points, and I'm just wondering where, at what points did you feel like you needed to intervene, and that the mindless agents weren't holding up, you know, or something like that?
They need a lot of discipline. Right. So it's for the viewer, you know, because there's humans watching it, right? I'm not making it for a machine to watch, but you know, so I do create variation, and in the editing also I reversed the action. I've reversed the motion, because I decided that the convergences I was not as interested in as the swarm kind of dispersing. So, but I would say that, you know, I'm partnering with my mindless agents. You know, it's like I don't have a pet, I don't have a cat or a dog. I have these mindless agents that I can set loose on this image, and the image then can be torn apart. You know, it's like as if, you know, it's flesh that's getting, you know, ripped into. And I am aware when I get the algorithms going that they have a certain a behavior, right? And that's me saying, oh, I want this algorithm that's for swarm behavior, and I want this algorithm that's for random behavior. I call it the random walkers and the hill climbers being the swarming ones, and the random walkers being, you know, random. And but they're random, like within their own neighborhood, so they're just going like this, they're not popping all over the place. So I have those two. Those are my instruments, right? Like a paintbrush or a camera, you know, or a certain lens on a camera, you know. So I've got these algorithms, but you know, like you're suggesting with generativity, maybe there's too much here and I want less. So hence, it's not just letting things go and like I hope and things work out for the best, although that's fine too. You know, it's like there's always the edit, you know, the editing time. But it is a collaboration with my tools, and the tools are the algorithms. There's many algorithms out there that, one could shop for, but these are ones that I understand, and also bridge to what, like, of course, John Cage, so if we know about randomness because of John Cage, there's a whole cultural lineage, but there's also the scientific lineage. So random walkers and hill climbers, have a certain role in creating models of natural processes. So we've had a lot of talk about nature and stuff, and it's been well represented in this show, but I also have, my work also reflects nature, natural processes, right? So swarms are natural processes. Random movements are natural. The movement of gases, let's say, is random. And I'm just transposing it to a different context. I'm using it in a different way because I'm an artist, I'm not a scientist. And these are two algorithms that I feel like I can get a grasp on. I'm not doing artificial intelligence. My agents are mindless. So that's it. Like, I feel like, also I started out in film, so I also have a respect for the materiality of film. And to me, it's like, oh, this is fun. This is like the grain of film, except now the grain of the film has a behavior and a tendency to operate in a certain way. And I can also guide my film grain, to displace the image, pieces of the image, pieces of flesh, considering the image as flesh, like displacing it across the field of vision. So so it's meant to be very visceral, or for me it is, where the image is getting torn apart. And I understand I'm speaking with a certain visceral terms, because I think that people's eyes glaze over when we talk about coding, right? But to me, oh, maybe not you. You're my main audience. I love you. Without knowing anything about MMA and its violence, which I saw other images later, and I was appalled. But this image, just like it was in the Guardian newspaper, online, and I was immediately struck by it just because of the equilibrium of it. It's basically, the composition is basically this triangle, right? Like, what is more stable than a triangle? But it's these two men that are intertwined, yes, erotically, in a still image, because I'm separated from the violence of it because it's not moving. But it's they're intertwined, but it's obvious that yes, there's a dominant, a top and a bottom. I don't know how to characterize it. It's like there's this difference that one person is totally abject and dominated by the other. So it was so forceful, and these images like come through the the screen. Like there's a bazillion images, like you say, how do you pick one over the other? It was just, this one seemed special and significant. And I wanted to explore it without really understanding the background of the sport itself. And so when I looked at the other images, I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should, to test myself, what my purpose was, well, here's one, there's blood all over the ground. You want to use that one, Barbara? And I was like, no, thank you. It's like, I was very much, I do like the Bacon reference, Jean, a lot, because I have been looking at a lot of painting recently in the recent years, and specifically for this project, you know, yes, Bacon, I was thinking of too. But, you know, and the idea of the painterly surface and my envy of painters and what they, how they get to interact with the surface. So that was definitely on my mind. The equilibrium of the composition in what I imagined was a before and an after that was completely chaotic, turbulent. So it was a moment of repose. And so I was just very interested in that image, and also a way of creating a kind of visceral relationship to the screen. That's it.
You know what?
Oh, there's beauty. I'm sorry.
Yes, creativity and beauty, and we love each and every one of you. I think we're going to have to turn Zoom on, or we're going to crash our
computer.
Yes. Love you. Stay in touch.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Send us your new work.
Thank you. Thank you.